Hey y'all. I hope this finds you well. It's been a minute since we've done a Mark in the morning. But so just a kind of refresher. The last one we did was looking at Jesus feeding the 5,000, and this story comes exactly on the heels of that. This is Mark chapter 6, verses 45 through 52. Go ahead and read those if you have not before you watch this, because this will all make a little bit more sense if you just pause and read that real quick. I'm assuming you've done that. A couple of things that I just want to point out about this. The first thing is that like Jesus has been with these crowds. He's been feeding thousands upon thousands of people. He's tired. He was already tired before he was feeding them. So he dismisses everybody. He's going to go and pray. But an interesting thing that I want to point out is that it says he made his disciples get into a boat. He made his disciples get into a boat. Now, did Jesus know that a massive storm was going to come? Yes. Did he still send them out into a storm? Yes. And I want y'all to consider just with that thought, like, if this feels like a storm to you, this whole coronavirus thing, or maybe that is not a fear for you, but maybe it's the ramifications of not being able to go to school or not being able to see your friends or whatever it might be. That could be your current storm. Has Jesus sent you into that accidentally, or has he done that knowing that it is a storm in your life? Obviously, I think it is on purpose. He's doing it for a purpose. The other thing I wanted to point out was in verse, he goes out to them and they're freaked out. And the word, just in a little bit of study of this, the word, it says, it's kind of a confusing thing. It says he meant to pass them by. So there's Stevie, my boy. He means to pass them by, it says in verse 48. But it doesn't, that's kind of a confusing piece of language there. He meant to pass them by, but that passing by is supposed to remind us of both Moses and Elijah, which is like you wouldn't know this if you don't study it, but Jesus in his passing by is meant to remind us of when God passed by Moses at the burning, not the burning bush, later on Mount Sinai, and then Elijah at Horeb. He passed them both by, and it was a display of his majesty and his godness, his deity, and that's what he's doing here. If you recall, all throughout Mark, the question is, who is this guy? Who is this Jesus? And though he doesn't want everybody to know, he wants his disciples, he wants his closest people to know who he is. And that's why it says he meant to pass them by. He wants to show who he is. But here's the cool thing. Here's the really neat thing, that God might be trying to show you who he is through this time. But the really, hopefully encouraging thing is that what do the disciples do? It says they were utterly astounded. But it says in verse 52 that their hearts were also hardened. Their hearts were hardened. It means they didn't recognize him in the way that they should have. They didn't have great faith. They weren't super comforted by this. They still are having trouble grappling with the fact that Jesus is Lord, that he is God of all things. So you might find yourself in that position too. You might find yourself grappling with this situation and all the crumminess that is going with it. Maybe you know people who are sick, or you're anxious. But I just hope that you can see the disciples' response, see how it lacked, understand that we also lack in our response to God, and that he might be bringing us through hard times, and know that Jesus was still merciful. He was still merciful, even though he had every single right to just get frustrated with them. They'd already seen so many miracles. So that's the challenge. Think about yourself today. Are you encouraged by this? Does it reveal something about how you've been dealing with this situation? Think about that. Anyway, miss you guys. Hope you have a great day.